Hello there. Tonight we step toward a Viking farmhouse at the place where winter tries first, the door. Snow has packed itself against the lower wall. The wind keeps testing the latch, not angrily, just with the steady patience of something that has all night. Inside, beyond the wooden threshold, a strip of orange firelight lies across the floor, thin as a promise and about as reliable. You are not entering a cosy cabin with clean pine boards and cheerful blankets folded by a lifestyle photographer. You are entering a working house that smells of smoke, wool, animals, old food, damp leather, and human patience. And to be honest, you probably won't survive this if your idea of hardship is a slow phone charger. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell us where you are listening from and what the local time is beside you. Now dim the lights and duck, because the door has no interest in your dignity. The entrance is low enough to make the body show respect before the mind has chosen a position. One hand goes to the frame, one foot finds the raised threshold. You step over it carefully, not because anyone has explained its importance, but because the house teaches through shins. The threshold is not decorative. It helps stop drafts, drifting snow, loose dirt, and the small flood of cold air that wants to pour across the floor whenever the door opens. In many Viking-Age houses, especially longhouses in colder regions, entrances could be narrow, offset, or arranged with passages that slowed wind before it reached the living space. That is a simple historical fact with very immediate consequences. A doorway is not a gap. It is a small machine for deciding how much outside gets invited in. Behind you, the latch drops back into place with a wooden knock. It sounds modest, but everyone near the hearth hears it. In a house like this, a badly closed door is not a private mistake. It is public weather. A child looks up from the bench. Someone near the fire shifts a knee away from the cold line running along the floor. A dog lifts its head, judges you as unnecessary, and lowers it again. The door itself may be built from planks, pegged and braced, with iron used where the household can afford it, and wood doing most of the honest work. Leather hinges, wooden pivots, iron straps, sliding bolts, bars, hooks, and cords can all appear in different places and periods. The exact hardware changes with region, wealth, and survival in the archaeological record. What does not change is the job: hold against weather, animals, strangers, sparks blown wrong by a draft, and relatives who come in without closing quickly enough. The first cold you feel is not on your face, it is at your feet. Cold air crawls low, clever and quiet, following the uneven floor. The packed earth has been swept, but it is still earth. It holds damp where snow has melted from boots. A dark patch near the threshold shows where someone has already dragged winter inside and left it to become everyone's problem. A flat scrap of wood lies over the worst place, so bare feet do not meet it later. This is not rustic charm. This is household engineering at ankle height. A small brush of birch twigs rests beside the entry. It is for sweeping, yes, but also for beating snow from hems, boots and cloaks before the snow becomes water. That little bundle may be one of the least heroic objects in the room, which makes it extremely useful. A person can cross the sea in a longship and still be defeated by failing to knock slush off a shoe. The entrance also controls people. Nobody simply bursts into the warm centre unless they are foolish, powerful, or carrying news too urgent for manners. You pause. You let the household see you. In Norse society, hospitality matters, but so does caution. A visitor at the door may be a guest, a messenger, a neighbour needing help, a trader, a beggar, a threat, or an in-law, which in some households may require its own category of bravery. The written sources leave room for disagreement about exactly how formal everyday door customs were in ordinary Viking-Age farmhouses, because sagas often remember dramatic visits, insults, feasts, and killings better than the dull etiquette of wiping boots. But the doorway itself gives clues. It makes people slow down. It frames the newcomer. It gives those inside a breath to decide whether the face outside means work, obligation, danger, gossip, or another mouth near the food stores. You feel that pause now. The people inside do not leap up. They measure. A woman near the bench has a bowl in one hand and a look that counts more quickly than speech. Snow on your cloak, empty hands, no visible wound, no animal behind you, no shouting from the dark. Someone asks your name, or whose farm you have come from, or whether the track is still passable beyond the lower fence. The question is practical before it is friendly. In winter, identity and weather arrive together. The latch behind you is checked again, because trust is lovely and drafts are real. A wooden bar slides into place. It is not a grand lock of a castle gate. Doors are handled constantly. They take punishment from hands, wind, damp, and the small angers of daily life. A door is a tool people slam only when they can afford the repair. The house has already begun sorting the air you brought in. Cold drops and spreads along the floor. Smoke shifts overhead. The fire flickers sideways, annoyed by the brief draught. A hanging strip of cloth moves once, then falls still. The doorway's failure is never total, but neither is its success. Every entrance is a compromise. Let people in, keep winter out. Let smoke escape sometimes, keep warmth in. Civilization at this moment is a plank closing well. A low side passage or entry space may have served as a buffer in some houses, especially where weather demanded cunning. Wind loses force when it must turn. Cold air becomes less bold when slowed by walls, bends, skins, doors, or hanging cloth. A simple hide or woven hanging near an entrance can soften the draught, though it must also avoid sparks, damp, and the hands of children who will treat it as a private curtain for unhelpful theatre. Your cloak edge is brushed, and a few grains of frozen snow fall onto the threshold. Someone nudges them back toward the door with the side of a shoe. Snow belongs outside if anyone has the energy to be strict. The bar settles. The wind presses once from outside and finds no easy answer. Not no answer at all. A whisper still gets through at the bottom corner, thin and persistent. Someone notices, reaches for a twist of old wool or moss kept near the frame, and pushes it into the gap with 2 fingers. No ceremony, no comment. The room warms by fractions, which is the only way winter ever gives anything back. You remain near the entrance a moment longer, letting your feet learn the floor and your eyes learn the smoke. The threshold behind you is already dark, with meltwater and tracked dirt. The door holds, but only because wood, bar, plug, habit, and watchful hands all agree to keep holding. Inside, the hearth waits farther in, drawing people toward its red centre. But before warmth can be trusted, the house must finish closing its mouth against the snow. The house closes its mouth, and the wall beside the entry takes over the work. You put one hand against it as you move inward, partly for balance, partly because the floor near the door is not to be trusted. The surface is not smooth like dressed timber. It is thick, uneven, and faintly fibrous beneath the inner finish, as if the hillside has agreed to stand upright, but still remembers being a field. This wall begins outside, under a spade. Turf is cut where grass roots have gripped the soil into blocks strong enough to lift. Not any patch will do. Bad turf crumbles. Thin turf dries and splits. Turf too wet is misery with corners. The best pieces hold together because root, earth, and plant matter make a kind of living fabric. Cut, carried, stacked, and trimmed, that fabric becomes insulation. In Iceland and Greenland, where large timber is scarce, turf becomes one of the main answers to winter. In parts of Norway and Denmark, timber buildings are more common, though earth, wattle, daub, stone, and thatch still matter in different combinations. The Viking world is not a single building plan. It is a set of households solving cold with whatever the local ground, shore, forest, and labour can provide. A farm does not build from imagination. It builds from what can be cut, hauled, borrowed, traded, or found after a storm. The turf blocks are heavy. Even thinking about carrying them makes your shoulder object. A block must be lifted from the cutting ground, loaded, moved, and laid before it loses shape. Summer and autumn work decide winter comfort. The wall you touch tonight contains old sweating, old sore backs, Old arguments about whether that stack is straight enough. Warmth begins months before anyone sits near the hearth. A mainstream fact sits inside this rough surface. Norse settlers in the North Atlantic, especially in Iceland and Greenland, relied heavily on turf construction because woodland resources were limited and turf offered excellent insulation. Thick walls slowed heat loss. They also made houses low and earthbound, less like cabins and more like inhabited embankments. From outside, a winter farm could look partly grown from the land, the roof and walls blending into the slope until smoke gave the house away. The inner face of the wall may be lined or supported with timber where available. Stone can form the base, keeping turf from sitting directly in wet ground. Layers may be laid in alternating patterns for strength. Later Icelandic turf building traditions show highly developed techniques with carefully cut blocks and patterned courses, though Viking-Age examples vary and do not always preserve enough detail to be reconstructed neatly. Still, the principle is clear under your palm. A wall works because many small pieces refuse to fall apart at the same time. The evidence remains frustratingly divided over how closely later Icelandic turf house techniques match every Viking-Age building method, because organic walls slump, rot, get rebuilt, and leave archaeologists with stains, collapsed layers, post holes, and patient guesses. A wall that once stood shoulder high may survive as a low mound. A doorway may shift between phases. A room may be repaired so often that one house becomes several houses wearing the same address. The past is generous with dirt and stingy with labels. The wall smells faintly damp near the base. Not rotten exactly, more like stored weather. Turf holds warmth well, but it also holds water if drainage fails. That is the bargain. Too dry and it cracks. Too wet and it sags, chills, grows soft, or invites roots and insects into places where nobody asked for them. The household must watch the outside face after storms, patch weak spots, cut back growth, and press in fresh material where winter has worried a seam loose. Someone has stuffed a narrow gap near the door with moss and old wool. It looks like nothing. It is not nothing. A thumb-sized draft can undo a surprising amount of comfort. Moss, wool scraps, straw, bits of hide, wooden wedges, clay, and whatever else fits may become part of the wall's quiet defence. A house survives not by being perfect, but by being repaired before its flaws become weather. There is a smaller oddity tucked into the wall near a post, a tiny peg, blackened at the end, holding a cord that once tied something larger. It has been left there because removing it would create another hole, and because useless things sometimes become useful again if nobody throws them away too confidently. Viking households, like most pre-modern households, live by reuse. A peg becomes a hook, a broken handle becomes a wedge, a torn cloth becomes a draft stop. A thing is not finished until it has failed several different kinds of usefulness. Near the entry, the wall curves or leans slightly, not in a dangerous way, but in a way that makes the room feel made by hands rather than ruled lines. Longhouses sometimes had bowed walls, especially in Scandinavian timber traditions, giving them a ship-like outline when seen from above. In turf-heavy regions, walls may appear thicker, lower, more earthbound. Shape follows structure, structure follows material, material follows landscape. The house is a local sentence spoken in wood, stone, turf, and weather. You move farther along the wall and feel the temperature change. Near the door, the surface is cool. Farther in, closer to the hearth's reach, the wall has accepted a little warmth. Not much, enough for the fingers to notice. Thick turf does not heat quickly, but once warmed, it gives up heat slowly. This slow exchange is the reason people trust it. A thin wall reacts. A thick wall remembers. The house's outside face takes the full insult of winter. Snow packs against it and can even help insulate if it lies dry and still. Wind combs over it rather than through it when the wall is tight. Rain is worse. Sleet is worse still. Meltwater searches for weakness with the persistence of gossip. A good wall needs drainage, roof overhang, stone footing, and regular repair, because water is patient and houses are mortal. A child presses a knuckle into the wall where the inner surface has softened. An adult clicks the tongue. The hand withdraws. No lecture follows. The rule is simple. Do not worry the wall from inside. Winter is already doing that outside, and winter does not need assistance from the young. In one corner, a root strand protrudes from the turf like a thread escaping cloth. Someone has trimmed it before, but it has returned. The house is made from living material that has been asked to stop living in one way and start serving in another. Grass becomes wall, soil becomes shelter, roots become stitching. It is clever, but not clean. The wall is always partly nature under instruction. The room behind you has warmed by a fraction since the latch closed. The cold line at your ankles has thinned. Smoke still drifts overhead. The hearth still waits ahead. But here, beside the wall, you understand the first real victory of the house. Not fire, not food, not fur. Before any of that can help, the hillside itself must be cut into blocks and persuaded to stand between your sleeping body and the long white pressure of the season. A flake of dried turf loosens near the base and falls onto the floor. A woman notices it, bends, picks it up, and presses it back into a crack as if returning a stray thought to its proper place. The wall accepts the gesture without thanks. Outside, the wind leans again. Inside, the packed earth, root, stone, moss, wool, and human attention hold their line for one more breath. The wall holds its line, and the next thing your hand finds is wood. Not polished, not decorative, not the kind of golden timber people admire in restored halls while wearing clean shoes. This is a post darkened by smoke and handled by years. It rises from the floor with a slight lean, taking weight from above and passing it down into earth, stone, and whatever stubbornness the builder has trusted. Timber is the house's bone, and bone is costly. In a forested valley, wood may feel ordinary because trees stand within sight. In Iceland or Greenland, usable building timber can be scarce enough to shape the whole architecture of a settlement. Norse settlers in the North Atlantic used local scrub, imported timber, driftwood, and whatever could be salvaged, while turf and stone took on more of the wall's burden. That is a mainstream historical fact, and it changes how every board in this room feels. A beam is not background. A beam is a decision that may have begun at a shoreline. You look along the post and see old tool marks. An axe has left shallow facets where the wood was trimmed. A smoother wear shines lower down, where hands have touched it while standing, turning, lifting, waiting. The post is part support, part handhold, part boundary. It tells bodies where to walk. It tells smoke where to curl. It tells children where not to swing from things unless they enjoy being corrected in public. A smaller board has been pegged beside it, patched into place with 2 wooden dowels. The patch does not match. Nobody seems embarrassed. Matching is for people with spare materials and time to admire them. Here, a repair must hold, fit, and avoid making tomorrow harder. A house like this is full of visible thinking. This crack needed a wedge. This sagging shelf needed a brace. This doorboard split and received a second life as something narrower, humbler, and more obedient. The timber may have travelled farther than some people in the house. Driftwood can arrive on northern shores after long journeys from Siberian or North American forests, carried by currents into the lives of people who need beams, planks, handles, bowls, and fuel. A storm tide may leave useful pieces among weed and stones. Then begins the quieter work: claiming, hauling, drying, cutting, arguing over size, and deciding whether a piece is too good to burn. The sea gives gifts with salt in them, and every gift needs labour before it becomes shelter. Modern scholarship still has not quite resolved how often ship timber was reused directly in ordinary Viking-Age houses, because a plank taken from one life into another does not always leave a label saying where it first learned to creak. Some reused timbers are clear in later contexts or special finds. Other claims are harder to prove. The idea is tempting: a sea-worn board becoming a door, a bench, a brace above a hearth. It may happen. It does not need to happen everywhere to show the same habit. Good wood keeps working until it cannot. Near your shoulder, a peg holds a coil of cord and a small iron tool. The peg itself has a slightly flattened head, probably struck with a mallet too many times. Iron nails exist, of course, but wooden pegs do much of the work in buildings, furniture, and repairs. They are cheap in the way only something handmade can be cheap. Affordable if someone has the time, knife, wood, and patience. A peg swells when damp, shrinks when dry, loosens when the house moves, and can be replaced without wasting metal. It is a small piece of engineering pretending to be a stick. The roof beams above are darker. Smoke has lacquered them with soot until the grain nearly disappears. That dark skin can help protect wood from insects and damp in certain ways, though it comes at the price of air that makes eyes water and throats complain. The house keeps making these uneven bargains. A cleaner room may be less preserved. A smokier beam may last longer. Human comfort and timber longevity sit at opposite ends of the bench and refuse to fully make peace. A man takes down a short board from a wall slot and turns it in the lamp glow. It is not long enough for the sledge runner waiting near the hearth, but one edge may become a wedge. He tests it against his palm, then against the floor, then against the damaged piece. This testing is quiet, almost musical. Knock, turn, press, reject. His knife follows the grain in short strokes. Thin curls fall onto his knee, and he gathers them instead of brushing them away. Shavings are tinder if dry. Mess if ignored. Evidence if an adult asks who left them there. There is a quirky little dignity in offcuts. A sliver becomes a toothpick, a gaming counter, a child's toy, a wedge under a chest, a splint for a cracked bowl, a patch for a shoe sole while the real repair waits, a tally stick, a stirrer, a stopper. Wood is not divided neatly into object and waste. It passes through stages of usefulness, shrinking each time. By the end, even a shaving can help wake a morning coal. The post nearest the door has a darker scar, where something once hung from it often enough to rub the surface smooth. A harness strap perhaps, a bag, a lamp, a wet cloak hung badly until someone moved it. The wood remembers habits the way skin remembers pressure. Archaeologists sometimes read buildings through post holes and surviving timbers, but the touches are mostly gone. You stand beside one and feel how much daily life leaves without leaving a record. Farther in, a bench plank creaks as someone shifts. That plank may be oak if the household is fortunate, pine or other available wood if not, perhaps repaired at the underside with a second strip. A plank wide enough for a bench is not casual. It has been felled, split or sawn, shaped, carried, fitted. In some regions, large timber frames show organised woodland use and skilled carpentry. In timber-poor places, the same width might feel almost extravagant. Sitting becomes an unspoken claim on trees. The joints are not invisible. A scarf joint, lap, notch, peg, or crude brace may show where two pieces meet, because neither piece was long enough or straight enough to solve the problem alone. The house is less a perfect design than a long collaboration between available materials and repeated repairs. Wind finds a weakness, someone adds a wedge. Snow loads a roof, someone props a beam. A child loosens a peg, someone notices before the roof does. A small antler tine lies in a wall niche, used as a pick for old knots or tight bindings. Antler is another material that moves through the household easily. Combs, handles, pins, gaming pieces, needles, small tools. It sits beside wood in the same economy of shaped usefulness. The Viking world is often remembered through metal, silver, weapons and ships, but here survival depends just as much on the humble stubbornness of things carved from what animals shed, what trees give, and what storms leave behind. The board being shaped finally earns a grunt of approval. It is set beside the runner, not fitted yet, because the light is poor and mistakes in wood become permanent faster than apologies. The knife is wiped on a scrap, then tucked away. The post beside you takes another faint tremor from the roof as wind presses above. Nothing dramatic happens. That is success. Timber, peg, wedge, brace, driftwood, reused board, and smoke-dark beam keep their places without applause. Your hand leaves the post, and a faint black mark remains on your palm. You rub thumb against finger, feeling soot and old grain dust. The wall behind you has taken shape from turf. The frame before you has taken shape from wood made precious by landscape. Together they make a room sturdy enough for people to complain inside it, which may be one of architecture's most honest achievements. A loose shaving sticks to the edge of your sleeve as you move closer to the centre, where the roof gathers all this weight above the red, patient hearth. The loose shaving clings to your sleeve as your eyes travel upward, and the roof receives your attention with no sign of gratitude. It is too busy being heavy. Above the posts and beams, above the smoke-dark rafters, winter is lying across the house in layers: snow, wind-packed crust, thawed edges, refrozen seams, and the damp patience that waits for one badly judged joint. The roof is not a lid placed on top of a warm room. It is a burden arranged carefully enough not to become a disaster. Rafters lean into one another. Crosspieces hold their place. The whole structure depends on angles, weight, friction, pegs, lashings, and the builder's knowledge of what snow does when the weather changes its mind. A roof in this climate must keep warmth in, let smoke out, shed water, carry snow, and avoid collapsing onto the people who have already had a fairly full evening. In many Norse houses across the North Atlantic, turf or sod roofs help insulate the building, especially where timber is too scarce for generous wooden roofing. Sod is thick and slow to lose heat. It presses gaps closed. It gives the wind less to snatch. From outside, it can make the house seem half buried, as if the land has folded a blanket over its own people. That is the useful fact. The less comfortable fact is that sod is heavy, and snow makes it heavier. A sod roof asks a lot from the frame below. Turf has weight even in good weather. Add rain, thaw, ice and snow, and the rafters must carry not a poetic winter scene, but a load with mathematics in it. Nobody here uses the word engineering while lying under it, perhaps, but everyone understands the meaning when the roof gives a small groan. Heads lift. Conversation pauses. Someone listens for a second sound. If no second sound comes, life resumes, though with slightly less confidence in the universe. Birch bark may lie beneath the turf where available, acting as a water-shedding layer. Later Scandinavian and Icelandic turf roof traditions often use birch bark under sod because bark resists water and peels in flexible sheets. For Viking-Age buildings, preservation is uneven, and the exact roof layers are not always recoverable. Archaeologists and historians do not entirely agree on how often specific later turf roof methods can be projected back into earlier Norse houses, but the problem remains the same in every century. Keep water moving outward, not downward, onto someone's blanket. You hear the roof working when the wind shifts. The sound is low, muffled by the turf. It is not the sharp rattle of a thin wooden roof. Snow and sod thicken noise. They turn the storm into pressure. A gust travels across the roof as a dull shove, and the rafters answer through the posts. The post beside you trembles just enough to remind the palm that touched it why it matters. The slope of the roof is modest but necessary. Too flat and water waits. Too steep and turf may slide unless it is well held. The roof must persuade meltwater to leave without taking the house with it. In a thaw, snow softens, drips, runs into seams, then freezes again when night returns. A small leak can begin as a dark spot, then become a cold drop at the back of the neck, then a wet bedding roll, then a household dispute in which nobody admits having ignored the roof last autumn. A drip falls now from somewhere near the smoke-dark rafters. It lands not on the hearth, but beside a storage basket, which is worse, because flame can at least hiss dramatically. The basket only absorbs insult. A woman reaches across, moves it with 2 fingers, and sets a broken bowl beneath the drip. The bowl has found a second career collecting roof failure. This is the sort of promotion no object requests. There is a small, strange life on a turf roof when the weather allows it. Grass can grow there. Moss can settle. Roots can help hold the sod together, but roots can also pry, thicken, trap wet, and invite maintenance. In later turf house practice, roof growth might need trimming or repair, making the roof not just architecture, but a reluctant garden overhead. The idea sounds charming until you imagine climbing onto a roof to cut grass from your own ceiling because the house has decided to become a hill. Inside, the rafters carry things as well as weight. A strip of drying fish hangs from a peg. A bundle of twigs rests above easy reach. A spare cord has been thrown over a beam, then forgotten long enough to become part of the scenery. Roof space attracts objects because floor space is fought over. Anything hung overhead is safe from dogs, children, and careless feet, though less safe from smoke, damp, and being impossible to reach without standing on something unwise. The smoke hole is the roof's most troublesome honesty. A house with a central hearth needs a way for smoke to escape, but any hole in the roof also gives rain, snow, downdrafts, and bad ideas a place to enter. Covers, vents, gaps, and openings must be managed according to weather. If the vent is too open, heat leaves. If it is too closed, the smoke lowers until the room becomes a lesson in regret. The roof must breathe without shivering. A child points toward a blackened patch where soot has thickened under one rafter. An adult lowers the pointing hand, not because the soot is secret, but because pointing upward while holding a bone counter is how things get dropped into eyes. The soot layer marks years of smoke. It coats timber, discourages some pests, and gives the underside of the roof a dark, tarred look. It also means anyone who brushes against the wrong beam will wear the house on their sleeve. One odd trace sometimes found in houses is the placement of objects near posts, walls, or thresholds in ways that may have protective meaning. A small bone, a bead, a tool fragment, an animal part. Yet the roof complicates interpretation even more, because things fall, get tucked away, are hidden from children, or are placed for reasons nobody explains. A charm against collapse and a lost scrap can look unhelpfully similar after 1,000 years. The past has a talent for making practical mess resemble mystery. The roof keeps changing the room below. Under a good roof, people can risk sleep. Under a leaking one, people rearrange life around drops. A blanket shifts. A basket moves. A tool is lifted from damp. A child is told not to stand where water has begun to fall. The roof does not need to fail completely to govern the household. It only needs to threaten a sleeve, a sack, a bowl of grain, or a tired person's last dry corner. Another slide of snow moves overhead, slow and padded. This time it travels farther down one side, then stops with a soft weight against the eaves. Everyone waits through the sound. The beams hold. The bowl beneath the drip ticks once, then again. Someone will climb outside when daylight makes it less foolish. Snow may need clearing from the worst place. A turf edge may need pressing back. A vent cover may need adjusting. The roof has not finished being a task simply because it is above you. Your gaze lowers from the rafters, but the roof remains present in the body, in the instinct to keep bundles away from wet patches, in the careful placement of bedding, in the glance upward whenever wind changes tone. The house is warm because the roof holds. It is damp because the roof is imperfect. It is safe because many people have learned which imperfection matters tonight. The broken bowl under the drip receives one more drop. The sound is small, almost polite. Near the hearth, the smoke rises and searches for its exit, drawn toward the opening that must be both wound and airway. The roof waits above it all, heavy with sod, snow, soot, and unspoken repairs, holding winter up by the strength of dark wood and the hope that no seam has been left too long. The roof holds its breath around the smoke hole, and the smoke rises as if it has been promised a way out. It has not. Promises are too clean for this room. The smoke climbs from the hearth, gathers under the rafters, spreads sideways, finds a beam, folds around it, and only then drifts toward the opening above. It moves like a guest who knows the house badly and keeps choosing the wrong bench. You stand near the hearth long enough to feel the room in layers. Heat presses against your shins and hands. Smoke collects higher, where a tall person suffers first. The floor keeps its cold opinions. Between these layers, people work, sit, cough, laugh, and pretend not to be watching the smoke's mood. A central hearth in Viking-Age houses provides heat, cooking, light, and a drying place, while smoke escapes through roof vents, gable openings, doors, or gaps shaped by the building. That is the ordinary fact, and it is ordinary only until your eyes begin to sting. There is no chimney in the neat, later sense, no brick throat pulling smoke upward with disciplined confidence. The house depends on draft, wind, opening, heat, roof shape, and the judgment of whoever adjusts the vent. If the wind is kind, smoke thins and travels upward. If the wind turns, smoke is pushed back down, and the room becomes a shared complaint. Nobody needs to announce the change. The first person to blink hard tells everyone. A woman reaches for a pole, blackened at one end, and nudges something above the hearth. Perhaps it is a vent cover, perhaps a hanging flap or board arranged to shift the opening. The exact systems varied, and many have left little direct trace. What matters is the motion, small, practiced, and watched. She is not performing a ritual. She is negotiating with weather through a hole in the roof. The smoke lifts a little. The child nearest the bench stops rubbing one eye. The dog, who has been breathing low to the floor like a wise philosopher, remains unimpressed. Researchers are still split on the question of how efficiently different Viking-Age house forms ventilated smoke, because reconstructed buildings can be tested, but ancient houses change by repair, season, fuel, and use. Excavations show hearths, post settings, soot, wall lines, and roof possibilities. They do not preserve every evening's wind. A house may breathe well one night and badly the next. Smoke is not a fixed architectural feature. It is weather made visible indoors. The hearth itself is long, set into the central floor with stones and ash marking its working edges. The fire is not built high. Fuel is too valuable for vanity. A few sticks burn down into coals. Peat or dried dung may smoulder in regions where wood is scarce. Each fuel writes its own smell into the air. Dry birch gives one note. Peat gives another, thicker, earthier, slower. Dung smoke is useful and deeply unromantic, which is a fair summary of much winter survival. A pot hangs low enough to catch heat, but high enough not to boil over too eagerly. The chain above it is dark and greasy from years of smoke, steam, soot, and hands. Someone turns the pot slightly with a hooked stick. Steam rises through smoke, and for a moment the two mingle, food smell and eye sting, broth and rafters, hunger and irritation. Your stomach listens before your mind does. Then the smoke lowers again and reminds the stomach not to get sentimental. The smoke's path affects where people sit. Closest to the fire is warm, but not always comfortable. Too far back, and cold reaches from the wall. Too high on the bench, and your face enters the smoke layer. The best places are found by long experience and quietly defended. A guest may be given warmth as honour. A lower status worker may hover near heat only while tending a task. The fire is shared, but the cleanest breath is not equally distributed. Even air has rank when a room is crowded. Soot marks the rafters overhead in thick, uneven bands. Some beams are almost shiny with blackness. Smoke can help preserve wood by drying it and discouraging insects, but it also blackens surfaces and irritates bodies. That little unfair exchange sits above everyone's head. The thing that makes you cough may be helping the roof last longer. The house is full of such bargains, and none of them ask whether you find them pleasant. A strip of meat or fish hangs in the upper warmth, out of reach of dogs and children. Smoke brushes it slowly. Food can be dried and smoked near the hearth, though the line between preservation and accidental flavouring is probably argued by whoever has to eat the result. One odd household practice is the use of smoke-dark upper spaces as a kind of reluctant drying loft. Wet mittens, herbs where available, wooden gear, ropes, and strips of food all migrate upward until the rafters resemble a memory of every unfinished task. A boy tries to stand on a bench to reach a hanging cord. He rises too high, meets smoke, drops back down, and makes a face with great dignity. An adult takes the cord instead. No lesson is given. The smoke has already taught. This is how the house trains posture. Bend here, sit lower there. Keep your face out of that layer. Do not wave your cloak near the hearth unless you want everyone to smell your mistake. The fire also changes time. A new flame brightens faces, lifts work, and gives the room a sharper centre. Coals create a slower, redder hour. Smoke from open flame behaves differently from smoke off a smouldering peat clump. When the hearth is stirred, sparks climb, smoke thickens briefly, and people glance at hanging cloth. Fire is never only warmth. It is a useful danger that must be kept in the middle of the room like a difficult relative with valuable skills. Someone adds a small piece of fuel and immediately pushes it deeper with a stick so it does not flame too quickly. The movement is economical. No broad stirring, no cheerful poking for entertainment. A person who plays with the fire wastes heat, spreads ash, and risks sparks. The hearth is not a toy, though children clearly disagree until corrected often enough. The smoke hole above darkens as wind crosses it. For a breath, the smoke hesitates. Then it drains upward again, thinner now, and the room relaxes by a measure too small to name. A face reappears on the opposite bench. A metal brooch catches the renewed light. The pot resumes its low mutter. Someone wipes an eye with the heel of a hand and reaches for a spoon as if nothing has happened. You smell your own sleeve and find the house already there. Smoke enters wool quickly and stays like a quiet witness. By morning, anyone outside will know where you slept before you speak. Hair, cloak, belt, bedding, bowl and skin all take on the hearth's mark. Clean air belongs to the fields and the frozen path. Inside, breath is shared with fire. A small coal collapses, sending up a brief glow and a new thread of smoke. It rises, curls under the pot chain, slips past the hanging fish, and finds the dark opening above. The path is not straight, but it is enough for now. The house breathes imperfectly. The people inside breathe with it, blinking, warming, cooking, drying, waiting for the next turn of wind to decide whether the smoke will behave or come back down to sit among them. The smoke thins for a while, and the hearth becomes less of a bully and more of a red, useful heart. Someone reaches for the ash with a flat tool and draws it gently over the edge of the coals, not to kill them, to hide them. A fire left naked spends itself too fast, like a talkative guest who arrives with stories and leaves with all the ale. You watch the motion carefully because it is one of the quiet skills that decides the morning. The flame is not the prize now. Flame is bright, hungry, and wasteful. Ember is the thing worth keeping. Under ash, a coal can live through the night, protected from too much air while still holding enough heat to wake when fed dry tinder. In pre-modern hearth households across Northern Europe, banking embers overnight is a common practical habit, and in a Viking winter it matters sharply. A dead hearth at dawn means cold hands must make new fire before the house can properly begin. The ash is pale grey on top, darker underneath, soft where it has cooled and dangerous where red still hides. A child has been warned away from it so often that the warning now sits in the body. Nobody steps across the hearth casually. Nobody puts a bare hand into ash just because it looks dead. Ash lies. It is very good at lying. A small bundle of tinder sits in a protected place near the post, high enough to avoid damp, low enough to reach quickly. Dry moss, scraped birch bark, fine wood shavings, flax tow, or other light fibres may serve, depending on region and supply. The best tinder is boring to look at and glorious when needed. It must stay dry, which in this house is less an assumption than a daily achievement. Damp tinder is not useless, exactly. It is a lesson in patience, delivered while everyone is cold. A fire steel and flint may be available, with sparks struck into tinder, or older fire-making methods may persist in some places. But the easiest fire is the one that has not quite gone out. That is why the woman tending the hearth treats the coals as if they are sleeping animals. She draws ash over them, leaves a breathing edge, pauses, then adjusts again. Too much air, and the coal burns away before dawn. Too little, and the morning begins with disappointment in a grey bed. Specialists still hesitate over whether all Viking-Age households used identical fire-lighting kits in daily practice, because iron fire steels, flint, striker lights, tinderboxes, and organic tinder survive unevenly and do not tell us every household habit. Graves may contain tools, settlements may yield fragments, and later traditions fill some gaps with caution. The basic need is beyond debate. Fire must be made, kept, carried, or borrowed, and every method depends on dry material, practiced hands, and the weather not laughing too hard. Fuel weights in different forms. A few split sticks lie near enough to warm and dry, not close enough to catch. Peat bricks, if this is a place where peat is cut and used, sit in a stack with an earthy smell. Dried dung may be used where wood is scarce, especially in landscapes where animals produce what trees do not. This is one of those facts that sounds like an insult until you live without enough timber. Then it becomes sensible. Still not glamorous. Sensible. Peat burns slowly, with a thick, steady heat if dried properly. It must be cut from boggy ground, dried in stacks, hauled, stored, and protected from wet. That means winter fuel begins as summer labour, just as winter food does. The warmth near your hands tonight may have started as a block lifted from a peat bank months ago, stacked in wind, turned, dried, carried home, and saved. Every glow in the hearth has a past. Fire is not instant. It is stored labour becoming heat. Wood has its own ranking. A good piece goes to building or repair before it goes to flame, if the household can choose. Straight grain, useful length, and solid dryness all make a piece too valuable to burn casually. Twisted scraps, shavings, splinters, brush, deadfall, broken handles beyond rescue, and bits too small for joinery enter the fire's world first. The hearth receives what the carpenter has rejected, what the storm has dropped, and what the house can spare. One odd little habit belongs to carrying fire. In some traditional societies, embers are transported in covered containers, wrapped in ash, tinder fungus, bark, or other heat-holding materials, though the exact Norse household methods are hard to pin down. The idea is practical. If a neighbour has living fire and yours has died, pride may have to put on shoes. Borrowing fire is not a grand saga moment. It is a person standing in the cold with a container, hoping the coal survives the walk and nobody comments too much. Tonight, the household intends not to borrow. A small coal is exposed, then covered again, as if checked for health. The hearthkeeper uses a stick to make a shallow pocket in the ash. The sound is soft, granular, like dry sand. A spark shows once, very small, then disappears under grey. That red speck is more important than the lamp now. The lamp spends fuel to show people what they are doing. The ember saves the house from beginning tomorrow at 0. The smell changes when ash covers the coals. Less sharp smoke, more warm dust, old char, and faint cooked fat from the stones near the pot. Ash clings to the edge of the hearth tool. It clings to fingers. It floats up when disturbed and settles on bowls, benches, hair, hems, and sleeping dogs, who carry it with the offended patience of creatures blamed for less. Ash itself is useful. It can help clean greasy vessels when mixed with water, contribute to lye making in wider traditional contexts, and serve in managing the hearth. It banks heat, marks space, and receives waste. A heap of ash is not simply dirt, it is the fire's afterlife, and the household keeps finding uses for it. Even what has burned is not immediately dismissed. A bowl with a smear of fat is set aside because cleaning it properly now would waste warmth and water. In the morning, ash may help scour what grease is left behind. The bowl's owner would probably prefer magic. The household has ash. History rarely offers the more charming option. Near the hearth, someone checks the tinder bundle one last time and tucks it farther from the damp cloak. A few wood shavings from the earlier peg are wrapped in a scrap and saved. The movement is tiny, almost fussy, but the whole house depends on such fussing. Winter punishes the person who thinks small things are beneath notice. A dry shaving, a sealed gap, a covered ember, a closed latch. These are the polite little decisions that keep disaster bored. The red under the ash dims until it is barely visible. The room darkens with it. Not empty darkness, because heat remains, banked low and patient. People begin to settle as if following the fire's example. No one wants to waste breath on loud speech. The dog stretches a paw, then withdraws it from the warm edge before anyone needs to scold him. The animal end gives a slow sound. The roof drip has slowed. The hearthkeeper stays a moment longer, watching the ash for signs of too much life or too little. Then the tool is laid down where mourning hands will find it. The last visible coal is covered, but not buried beyond waking. Under the grey, the ember keeps its small red thought. Around it, the house cools by degrees, trusting a hidden fire to remember dawn. The half tool rests where morning will find it, and the warmth spreads unevenly across the benches like an old favour. You sit along the raised platform, knees drawn slightly in, because the passage between bench and fire belongs to everyone, and therefore to no one comfortably. The wood under you is not soft, but it is better than the floor. In this house, better is a serious category. The bench is not just a bench. It is a line of sleeping places, a work surface, a shelf, a border, a place for honoured bodies, tired bodies, useful bodies, and bodies that have been told twice to move their feet. Raised side platforms are a common feature in many Viking-Age longhouse reconstructions and excavated layouts, often running along the walls with the hearth between them. That arrangement is one of the main ways the room becomes livable. Heat stays near the centre. People stay lifted from the cold ground. Social order stretches along the boards. You feel the difference immediately. The floor near the threshold is cold and damp in patches. The bench is dry enough, warm enough, and crowded enough to make complaints inefficient. A folded skin lies at one end. A rolled blanket sits near a post. Someone has tucked a pouch under the edge, not hidden exactly, but placed where the wrong hand would have to become noticeably rude to reach it. The bench maps the household without drawing lines. The warmer places are known. The places near drafts are known. The spots where smoke gathers if you sit too upright are known. The board that creaks like a gossip is known. A guest can be honoured by being moved closer to warmth and better company. A lesser guest can be honoured in words, while seated where the door explains the truth. Hospitality has layers, and one of them is temperature. Nobody entirely agrees on how strictly seating rank in saga literature reflects ordinary Viking-Age farmhouses, because many written sources were recorded later and often sharpened social moments for drama. Elite halls clearly use seating to show power and honour, and ordinary houses likely had their own looser hierarchies. The bench beneath you makes that easy to believe. People do not need formal rules to know who belongs near the best heat. They only need memory and elbows. A child crawls across the platform with the confidence of someone too young to respect geography. An adult catches the back of the child's tunic and redirects the journey before a foot lands in someone's bowl. The child complains in a whisper, which is ignored at professional level. On these benches, children learn where bodies may go before they learn why. Do not step on the cloak. Do not touch the pouch. Do not lean into the smoke. Do not kick the old person. The house is a school with splinters. The boards carry all kinds of work. A spindle turns near one knee. A strip of leather is softened between fingers. A small piece of antler is rubbed smooth. A needle flashes once in the low light, then vanishes into cloth. The bench is a workbench because the warm zone is here, and the warm zone is never left idle if hands can still move. Winter evenings do not create spare time. They create tasks that can be done sitting down. Under the bench, storage begins. A chest fits there if the space allows. A basket of wool. A bundle of repaired straps. A wooden bowl shoved back too far and forgotten until someone needs it badly. Longhouses do not separate furniture and storage neatly. A platform may hide tools, food containers, bedding, personal goods and small private things. Private, in this context, means only that no one has asked loudly enough. A small bone comb lies near a folded cloth missing one tooth. It has not been thrown away because a missing tooth does not end a comb's career. Combs are common finds in Viking-Age contexts, often made from antler plates riveted together, and they matter for grooming, lice control, and appearance. One broken tooth is an inconvenience. Two become a discussion. The comb will stay useful until it becomes repair material, toy, token, or rubbish with ambitions. The sleeping side of the bench shows itself gradually. The blanket rolls are not arranged yet, but people have begun to claim space by leaving things where their shoulders will be later. A cloak folded twice. A pouch set at the head end. A child's small shoe placed where no one should step, which guarantees someone will. The board nearest the wall is warmer than the floor, but not warm in any generous sense. The wall gives back stored cold and stored heat depending on the hour, the weather, and the mood of the house. At night, the bench becomes a line of bodies. Not a romantic line, a practical one. Shoulder near shoulder, feet angled away from the hearth. Children placed between warmer adults when kindness and rank allow it. Older people near less draught if the household can spare the room. Guests fitted into the pattern like awkward cargo. A person who snores may be placed by reputation rather than status, which is one of the rare moments when rank meets justice. The bedding is valuable because cloth and skins are labour. Wool blankets require sheep, shearing, washing, carding or combing, spinning, weaving, fulling, drying and care. A sheepskin requires an animal, skinning, curing, scraping and patience. These are not background comforts, they are stored work. When someone pulls a blanket over the knees, many hours of other hands come with it. The bench also gathers smells by layers: warm wool, drying leather, old smoke pressed into skins, a trace of sour milk from a child's sleeve, a wooden cup not cleaned quite well enough, human hair, ash, the faint dry smell of antler being worked. It is not one smell but a family argument of smells, all sharing space because the walls do not offer alternatives. Someone beside you shifts and the board dips slightly. The movement passes down the platform, small but felt. Sleep here will not be private. A cough at one end travels. A dream twitch bothers the next person. A whispered quarrel becomes public property within 3 breaths. Yet the same closeness carries help. A dropped blanket is found. A cold hand is covered. A child half waking is settled before crying spreads through the room like spilled ale. There is a thin scratch cut into the bench edge, perhaps from a knife, perhaps from counting, perhaps from boredom. Next to it is another mark, and another, not regular enough to be an official tally. Someone has worried this wood over many evenings. Ordinary people leave marks without meaning to become evidence. The bench keeps them longer than speech. A bowl is passed behind you, and everyone leans in the same careful rhythm to let it through. The movement would look rehearsed if it were not so tired. The house teaches choreography through inconvenience. Lift the knee, pull back the elbow, do not knock the hanging pouch. Let the old person keep the corner. Watch the child's foot. Save the warm place unless someone with more claim arrives. The bench creaks again as bodies settle deeper into the evening. The hidden ember under ash still holds the room's future, but the bench holds its present. Work half finished, sleep not yet begun, rank carefully unnamed, warmth divided by habit, and every small possession placed where its owner hopes it will remain. Your shoulder touches the wall. Your feet find the board's edge. The raised platform narrows the house around you, not kindly, not cruelly, just closely. And the warmth that reaches you has already passed through wood, wool, smoke, and the bodies of everyone sitting near enough to share it. The warmth shared along the bench does not stop at the human end of the house. It thickens toward the darker side, where the air changes before the eye finds the animals. First comes the smell. Not one clean farm smell, not the friendly hay scent invented by postcards, but a layered, damp closeness. Hide, breath, manure, old bedding, fodder, sour wood, and the faint heat of large bodies waiting through the night. A cow shifts in the byre, and the sound lands low in the room. The hoof does not ring. It presses, scuffs, and settles. Somewhere a sheep answers with a small nasal complaint. The dog lifts its head, considers whether this requires professional attention, and decides no. You remain on the bench, but the animal end pulls the house into a wider truth. This is not a human shelter with animals added for atmosphere. It is a farm shelter, and the farm has lungs. In many Norse farmsteads, especially in harsher North Atlantic settings, livestock could be housed in attached or integrated byre spaces during winter. The arrangement varied by region, date, wealth, and building type, but the basic reason is clear. Cattle, sheep, goats, and sometimes other animals were valuable, vulnerable, and necessary. A cow left to winter weather without shelter is not an emblem of rugged simplicity, it is bad accounting with hooves. The byre is separated from the living space, but not enough to spare the nose. A partition, a change in floor, a narrowing passage, a lower area, or a doorway may mark the boundary. Archaeologists look for drains, floor deposits, phosphate traces, hoofwear, and built divisions to identify animal spaces. The animals leave chemistry where words do not. Even 1,000 years later, the ground remembers them with more confidence than most people remember names. Academic opinion still shifts around the problem of how consistently humans and animals shared one roof across the Viking world, because a Danish hall, a Norwegian farm, an Icelandic turf house, and a Greenlandic settlement do not answer the same way. In some places, separate buildings may serve more of the animal work. In others, attached byres or integrated layouts make practical sense. The cold does not care about architectural categories, but archaeologists have to. You rise only enough to see along the partition. A horn catches a little firelight, then disappears. The animal's breath comes in pale warmth near the darker air. The body heat is real. A cow is a furnace that requires hay, water, space, cleaning, and a level of tolerance that modern central heating rarely demands. Sheep add their own smaller warmth. Goats add warmth plus character, which is not always an improvement. The smell of manure is not simply endured, it is managed. Bedding must be refreshed when possible. Waste must be moved. Floors must be scraped. Dung is unpleasant inside the house, but outside the house it can become fertilizer, and in wood-poor places dried dung can become fuel. This is one of winter's blunt lessons. A material may be disgusting in 1 hour and valuable in another. The household cannot afford delicate opinions about useful filth. A wooden scraper rests near the byre entrance. Its edge is worn unevenly from cleaning the floor or pushing muck toward a drain or pile. It is not a famous tool. It has no saga. It will not be buried with honour unless someone is very confused. Yet without it, the byre becomes worse by morning. A farm depends on such tools. Low, dirty, necessary, handled by people who rarely get praised for keeping the worst from becoming unbearable. Fodder sits stacked where animals cannot reach it too freely. Hay, leaf fodder in some places, dried grasses, and stored feed are measured by the season's length. The animal wants more than the household can give. This is not a moral failing on either side. Winter turns every mouth into a calendar. Each bundle offered tonight removes a little from the future, and each animal kept alive preserves milk, wool, breeding, manure, traction in some settings, or status for the spring. A younger household member carries a small armful of fodder toward the stall. The bundle looks light until you remember how many such bundles a winter consumes. The cow lowers her head and noses into it with slow certainty. She does not appear grateful. Livestock are not designed to validate human sacrifice. They eat because they are alive, which is reason enough. There is an odd intimacy in hearing an animal chew indoors. The sound is patient, wet, repetitive, almost calming if you forget what it costs. The jaw turns, the fodder shifts, a rope creaks against a post, a tail flicks. The animal's whole winter task is to survive, digest, and not injure anyone careless enough to stand in the wrong place. In that sense, she is perhaps the most honest worker in the house. A child is told not to go behind the cow. The warning comes flat and immediate. No one decorates it. A kick in close quarters can break bone, ruin work, or turn a quiet night into days of trouble. Children learn animal geography early. Front, side, horn, hoof, tail, manger, tether, safe hand, unsafe step. These lessons are not written. They are repeated until the body understands faster than curiosity. The buyer also changes disease and pests. Fleas, lice, flies in warmer seasons, damp bedding and close air all belong to the risks of living near animals. At the same time, animals are too valuable to abandon to cold, hunger and predators. The house chooses the trouble it can manage over the loss it cannot. This is not ignorance, it is calculation made with limited options. One small peculiar thing hangs on a peg near the animal end. A broken horn used as a scoop or measure. Horn can become drinking vessels, handles, cups, spoons, gaming pieces, and small containers. Here, a damaged piece has been demoted to feed work. It still serves. The cow does not care that it once belonged to a more graceful head. The household respects use more than biography. Water waits as a problem. Animals need it even when streams freeze. Snow can be melted, but melting enough snow takes fuel, and fuel is already a guarded substance. Ice may be broken from a pond or trough. Buckets can freeze. Wooden staves can split or loosen if vessels dry too much by the hearth. So the care of animals reaches back into the human part of the room, toward fire, tools, storage, and the person who must wake before anyone else wants to. A sheep coughs once, startlingly human. Someone on the bench murmurs, half asleep, and turns over. For a moment, the boundary between human noise and animal noise blurs. Breathing is breathing. Warmth is warmth. The house gathers all of it under the same roof, because the world outside is less forgiving than the smell inside. The animal end settles again. Fodder lowers in the manger. A hoof presses straw. The scraper waits for morning. The child, warned away, returns to the bench with the offended dignity of someone denied a fascinating danger. The cow breathes out, slow and damp, and that breath joins the smoke, wool, ash, and stored heat of the longhouse. You pull the blanket edge closer, aware now that part of the warmth reaching your side has passed through hay, hide, manure, and the large, quiet body of an animal winter has not yet taken. The blanket edge comes closer, but the house still finds openings. A thin current travels under the bench and touches the back of your ankle. Your hand goes to your cloak fastening before you decide to move it. Clothing answers first. In this house, the body learns that walls are useful, fire is useful, animals are useful, but the garment nearest your skin is the shelter that never gets to rest. Wool does most of the work. It traps warmth, tolerates damp better than linen, and can be spun, woven, fulled, patched and bullied back into service after many insults. Viking-Age clothing across Scandinavia and the Norse Atlantic relies heavily on wool, with linen used where flax is available and where status or supply allows. That fact sits against your wrists and throat. It is not abstract textile history. It is the reason the cold has not already walked straight through you. Your tunic lies under a heavier outer layer. The wool scratches a little where sweat and smoke have roughened it. The seam under the arm has been repaired once because that is where reaching, hauling, and sleeping badly all tug at the same narrow line of thread. A loose seam is not just untidy, it is a small door for cold air. A needle and thread can become winter tools as important as a knife. The cloak over your shoulders is pinned, not buttoned in a modern row. A brooch or pin gathers cloth near the chest or shoulder, leaving folds that can be shifted according to wind, work and dignity. A cloak can become outerwear, blanket, bag, curtain, cushion, rain cover, or awkward pillow. This flexibility is helpful, though it also means someone is always borrowing a cloak for a use the cloak's owner considers temporary, and history considers permanent. Across the hearth, a woman adjusts the straps of an overdress, the metal of her brooch catching the low red light. Oval brooches are strongly associated with many Viking-Age women's graves, often fastening a suspended dress over an underdress, though daily clothing varied by region, wealth and circumstance. Men's dress may include tunics, trousers, cloaks, belts, and pins. The main point is not a costume chart. It is that clothing fastens the body into work, gender, rank, storage, and warmth, all at once. Specialists still debate how closely burial clothing reflects ordinary daily dress, because graves may show ceremony, family display, inheritance, local custom, and chosen memory, rather than the exact outfit worn to scrape manure or fetch water. A rich brooch in a grave does not mean every winter morning glittered. Still, textile fragments, tools, metal fittings, and wear patterns give enough evidence to know that Norse clothing was layered, worked, repaired, and often more colourful than the dull brown imagination modern people lazily assign to the past. Colour matters when it appears. Madder can give red tones, woad can produce blues, weld can give yellow. Lichens, barks and local plants widen the palette, though dye strength, cost and availability vary. A bright band along a cuff or hem does not warm the body, but it warms reputation. A tablet woven edge may strengthen cloth and show skill at the same time. Beauty is not separate from use. Sometimes it is sewn directly onto the part most likely to fray. A narrow woven band at someone's wrist has been patched with a different thread. The mismatch shows in the lamplight. Nobody comments. Perhaps everyone has already commented enough. A band can bind a sleeve, trim a garment, fasten gear, hold a knife sheath or tie a bundle. Tablet weaving produces strong, patterned bands in the Viking world, and the small cards used to make them can create complex designs with remarkable precision. It is a quiet technology, almost smug in its usefulness. Your belt sits over the tunic, holding more than cloth in place. A knife hangs from it, perhaps a pouch, perhaps a fire kit, a comb, a bit of cord, a small key, or a whetstone, depending on who you are and what you are trusted to carry. A belt is a moving shelf. It keeps necessities close in a room where putting something down is the first step toward blaming a child for losing it. The shoes are less reassuring. Viking-Age leather shoes are often simple by modern standards, with turnshoe construction in many finds, stitched inside out, then turned so the seam lies protected. They can be well made, but they are not thick rubber-soled boots with obedient insulation. The floor speaks through them. Cold speaks through them. A wrinkle in a foot wrap speaks through them for the entire evening and refuses to change the subject. Someone near the buyer pulls dried grass from a shoe and replaces it with a drier twist of wool. Stuffing shoes or using foot wrappings helps against cold and damp, though it can bunch under the toes and create a private tragedy inside the leather. A person may be brave in public and still lose a long moral argument with a badly folded foot wrap. Winter enjoys humble victories. A mitten lies near the hearth, palm side up. It is not a sleek knitted mitten of later fame, but a sewn or Norla binding style hand covering may protect fingers in cold regions. Norla binding, an older looping technique made with a needle, is known in Scandinavia and produces warm, sturdy textiles. It is slower to unravel than knitting, which is useful when the object belongs to a person who drags firewood, handles rope, and treats clothing like an enemy that must still serve. One quirky item from the clothing world is the needle case, sometimes made from bone, antler, or metal, worn from a brooch or belt. It protects the small tools that keep garments alive. A needle looks fragile until winter depends on it. Then it becomes a narrow piece of survival. Losing one in the rushes or floor dirt can turn the whole bench into a search party with bad tempers. A comb passes from hand to hand. Antler combs are common finds across Viking-Age sites, often made from several plates joined with rivets and decorated with simple lines. They manage hair, beards, lice, and social presentation. The room may smell of smoke and cattle, the floor may be damp, and the roof may drip into a broken bowl, but people still comb themselves. This is not vanity as foolishness. It is order kept on the part of the body most visible to everyone who shares your air. Clothing also stores smoke. Wool drinks the hearth deeply. Leather keeps the scent in a dull, fatty way. Linen holds a cleaner sharpness when freshly washed, but freshness does not last long in this room. By morning, every garment announces the house. Soot, ash, animal warmth, sour dairy, and the faint edge of whatever fuel burned last. Outside, a clean wind may strike your cloak and release the smell again, sending a small indoor history into the open air. A damp hem is lifted from the bench and checked between fingers. Not dry. Better than before. The cloth has stiffened where snow melted and smoke dried it unevenly. Too much heat would shrink or scorch. Too little leaves cold water tucked into the fibres. The garment must be turned, moved, watched. Drying clothing is not passive. It is another chore pretending to be waiting. At the edge of the platform, a torn shoe thong is replaced with a strip cut from older leather. The older leather has already served another purpose. Its surface shows a former stitch line, little holes marching along one side. Now it will hold a shoe closed. Later it may become a tie for a bundle, then a patch, then a scrap near the fire. Cloth and leather descend through usefulness by stages, each one less dignified and more necessary. You tuck the cloak closer under your thigh, sealing one cold path. The pin at your shoulder presses through a fold and holds. The wool at your neck scratches, but it also stops the draft. Across the room, the needle case closes with a small click. The comb returns to a pouch, and the damp hem is shifted one handspan nearer the warmth. The house has walls of turf and timber, yes, but the body survives inside smaller walls too. Sleeve, belt, shoe, cloak, seam, wrap, and the patient thread that keeps each one from opening to the dark. The thread that guards the cloak also guards the stores, in its own way. A tied sack is only cloth with a decision in it. A closed pouch is only leather until someone trusts it with salt. Beyond the benches, where the warmer air loses its red edge, food waits in containers, cords, tubs, hooks, shadows, and rules. You do not enter that part of the house as if browsing. Stored food has a social border. A child may be sent to fetch a bowl, but not to rummage in the grain. A guest may be fed, but not invited to inspect the butter tub with the calm interest of a tax collector. The stores are not hidden because the household is miserly. They are guarded because winter is long and hunger has excellent hearing. The first smell is fish. Dried fish hangs high, stiff and pale in places, darker where smoke has touched it. Stockfish, especially dried cod and related fish from northern waters, becomes an important food and trade good in the medieval North Atlantic world, with drying traditions rooted in cold coastal climates. For a winter household, the value is obvious. It keeps, it travels, it does not demand a pasture. It also resists the teeth like a legal dispute. A strip is taken down and tapped against a board. It gives a hard, dry sound. Before eating, it may be beaten, soaked, cooked into broth, or chewed with a patience that improves character, whether character asked for improvement or not. The fish is not a snack in the modern sense. It is stored coastline. It is wind, salt air, knife work, racks, gulls kept away, and the careful timing of weather turned into something a person can hold. Grain sits lower and drier, wrapped or binned, watched with an attention that would flatter a king. Barley is one of the key cereals of the Viking world, especially in northern regions where wheat is harder to grow. Oats and rye appear too, depending on place and period. Grain can become porridge, flatbread, ale, or thickening for a pot. But first it has to survive damp, mice, mould, and the optimism of people who would like a larger portion. A wooden lid is lifted from a bin, and the smell underneath is faint, dry and dusty. Grain dust catches in the throat. A hand sinks in only briefly, not luxuriously. This is not abundance being admired, this is supply being checked. A few kernels are pinched, rubbed, inspected. Damp grain changes feel before it announces itself honestly. A household that ignores grain spoilage may discover the mistake after there is no polite replacement. Researchers are still split on the question of how much grain ordinary Norse households in colder North Atlantic settlements could grow locally, compared with what they imported, gathered, or substituted through fish and dairy, because charred seeds, pollen, isotopes, storage traces, and written evidence do not all answer with one voice. The broad pressure is clear enough. In a marginal climate, every harvest carries risk, and food systems become mixtures rather than tidy menus. Dairy lives in tubs, bowls, skins, and memory. Milk is too brief to trust in its fresh form. It must be changed quickly into something with more patience. Butter, cheese, curds, skyr, and whey all help stretch the work of animals into the dark months. In Icelandic food tradition, skyr and sour whey become especially important, and while later records must be used carefully, the logic fits the world around you. A cow gives milk in season. A household gives that milk a future. A tub is opened only long enough for a smell to escape. Sour, sharp, controlled. Good sour and bad sour are not the same. The nose learns the difference because the stomach would rather not be surprised. Whey can preserve food, flavour dishes, and serve as a drink. It is not glamorous, it is useful, and usefulness has a way of outlasting glamour in rooms where the roof still drips into a broken bowl. One odd little storage habit belongs to butter. In later northern traditions, butter could be stored for long periods, sometimes in cool places, sealed containers, or even buried under certain conditions. For the Viking-Age, exact practices vary, and evidence must be handled carefully. But butter as concentrated dairy wealth matters. It is fat, calories, flavour, trade, and comfort in a form that can be divided with a knife. A small amount in a pot changes the mood of the meal more efficiently than any speech. Salt sits in a smaller place because it is valuable. It preserves meat and fish, sharpens food, and costs labour, trade, or fuel to produce and obtain. Where wood is scarce, boiling seawater for salt becomes expensive in a very practical way. Every bit of fuel used for salt is fuel not used for warmth, cooking, or drying. Salted stores are safer, but salt itself is not casual. A careless pinch can feel like theft, only crunchier. Smoked meat hangs where the smoke can reach but not ruin it. Meat in winter often follows slaughter decisions made when fodder runs short. Animals that cannot be fed through the cold may be killed, their meat preserved by drying, smoking, salting, or freezing conditions where reliable enough. This does not mean every household feasts after slaughter. It means the household converts a living cost into stored food before the cost eats the rest of the hay. A bone rests near a bowl, cracked for marrow earlier. Bones are not waste until they've been argued with. They can flavour broth, feed dogs, become tools, be carved into needles, pins, gaming pieces, handles, or small fittings. The household's relationship with leftovers is patient and unsentimental. If something still has use in it, someone will find that use, even if the first proposal is unpleasant. The stores are also a map of rank. Better portions may go to the household head, honoured guests, workers who need strength, the sick if mercy and supply allow, or children when adults choose care over strict measure. But winter portions are watched. A generous hand at the wrong time can become a hungry week later. A tight hand can damage reputation. Feeding people is not merely cooking, it is politics with a ladle. A woman ties a sack closed with 2 turns of cord and a knot she can read by touch. The knot itself may be a signal, opened, unopened, tampered with, tied by one person rather than another. The cord scratches over the cloth. She pulls once, then again, testing. The movement is small, but the room notices. A closed sack means decision. It means not yet. It means the food inside has been assigned to time. Nearby, a wooden measure sits upside down. Measures matter because memory is generous and grain is not. A scoop can become law inside a household. 1 scoop for this pot, half for thickening, none until morning. The measure's rim is worn smooth, perhaps from years of being dragged through meal. Its size may be local, practical, not standardized in any grand bureaucratic sense, but everyone under this roof knows what it means when it appears. The child who earlier worried at the bench watches the stores with frank interest. An adult shifts slightly, blocking the view without needing to speak. Hunger teaches children quickly, but so does household authority. You may want, you may ask, you may not take. A locked chest, tied sack, high hook, or adult body between you and the food is the grammar of winter. The fish is rehung, The grain lid settles, the sour tub is closed firmly. A small smear of butter is wrapped away from the heat. Nothing looks dramatic when it returns to shadow. That is the point. The stores must wait quietly. Their work is not to dazzle the evening, but to survive it. Your stomach registers the smells even after the containers close. Dried fish, sour whey, grain dust, smoke meat, salt, old wood. They remain in the air like promises with conditions attached. The hearth can warm the hour, but the stores hold the season. Behind every closed lid is a piece of summer: coast, field, cow, smoke, hand, knife, cord, and judgment, waiting in the dark until someone with the right to open it decides that tomorrow has arrived. The closed lids return the room to dimness, and the evening becomes a matter of small flames. The stores can wait in shadow. Hands cannot. A needle still needs its hole. A knife still needs its edge seen before it slips. A game piece still needs enough light to be accused of landing in the wrong square. A lamp is brought nearer the bench, carried with the care given to things that are both useful and easy to ruin. Its bowl is shallow, darkened at the lip, and faintly greasy. The wick leans into a little pool of fat or oil, drawing up just enough fuel to keep aflame. In parts of the Norse North Atlantic, soapstone lamps are well known, especially where stone suitable for carving is available, and other simple lamps could burn fish oil, seal oil, animal fat, or whatever the household can spare. Light here is not an atmosphere. It is a ration. The flame brightens one small circle and abandons the rest of the house. That is how night is spent, not by defeating darkness, but by purchasing little islands inside it. Within the lamp's reach, a woman threads a needle. Beyond it, a child's face becomes half a face. Farther still, the animal end has only breath and sound. Modern eyes expect a room to be filled evenly with light. This room refuses. It gives light to the task that earns it. The wick must be managed. Too much wick smokes and wastes fuel. Too little drowns and dies. A pin or small stick coaxes it into better position. The flame grows, flutters, and steadies with a faint smell of warm fat. If fish oil feeds it, the scent is sharper. If tallow, heavier. Nobody comments unless it burns badly, because complaint is another fuel the house does not need in excess. Even now, opinion is not fully settled on how long ordinary Norse households regularly worked by artificial light during winter nights, because lamp fragments, soot marks, sagas, and later practice do not give one neat schedule. Some evenings may be full of work, some may end early to save fuel, some may depend on moonlight, firelight, wealth, season, and urgency. The objects remain. The hours between them are harder to measure. The mending comes first, because clothing keeps cold from becoming personal. A torn seam is held close to the lamp. The needle goes in, disappears, returns with thread. The cloth puckers but holds. Each stitch is small and slightly different from the last, because hands are tired and light is poor. It is not beautiful work, perhaps. It is enough work. Enough is one of winter's noblest words. A bit of carving happens beside it. The man with the knife turns a scrap of wood, shaping it into a peg, a gaming piece, or a tool handle too small to name yet. Knife work in poor light is slow. The blade draws toward the thumb only with careful pressure. Shavings gather on his knee and are not wasted. Dry curls can feed the morning fire. Wet curls are only mess. He sorts them with the absent-minded care of someone who has learned that almost everything becomes useful just after you throw it away. The lamp changes the speed of voices. People speak lower near a small flame, as if loud words might knock it sideways. A story begins without announcement. It is not yet the grand kind, not a formal recitation before an honoured hall. It is a winter story, shaped for people who are also mending, picking at knots, watching a child, and listening for animals. A name appears, a place appears, a foolish neighbour appears almost immediately. Because every good household story needs someone absent enough to be safe. The Viking world prizes spoken memory. Poetry, genealogy, praise, insult, lore, news, and family history all travel through mouths long before they are written in the forms that survive for us. The sagas are written down later, mostly in medieval Iceland, but they preserve the importance of storytelling, reputation, and remembered speech in Norse culture. Around a bench, that tradition does not need grandeur. It needs listeners who know when to laugh softly and when to pretend they have not heard a dangerous detail. A small board is pulled out, scratched with a grid. A few game pieces appear from a pouch, bone, antler, or wood, rubbed smooth by many fingers. Games of the Tafel family, including Hnefatafl, were played in the Viking world before chess became dominant in Northern Europe. Boards and pieces have been found in graves and settlements. Strategy fits winter well. It lets people defeat each other without leaving the bench, which is polite in this weather. One piece is darker than the others, not by design, but from handling. Another has a little nick on one side that everyone knows and someone uses dishonestly while pretending not to. The child sees this and says nothing, storing the knowledge for a better moment. The players lean in. The lamp leans with them. A move is made. A pause follows, full of judgment. Then a quiet accusation rises, and the evening improves. The game is not separate from work. A player shifts a piece, then takes up a needle. Another studies the board while smoothing a leather thong. Someone listening to the story corrects a detail without looking up from the game, causing a brief silence of the kind that can either become laughter or trouble. It becomes laughter. Not loud, just enough to warm the air without spending wood. A comb is passed through hair near the lamp's edge. Antler teeth catch on a knot. The person winces, then keeps combing. The lamplight shows what the fire hides. A louse egg, a frayed collar, a splinter near a fingertip, a crack in a cup rim, a smear of ash on a cheek. Night does not conceal everything. Sometimes it makes the small things unavoidable because the light is so narrow. The lamp also makes status visible in flashes, a silver glint at a brooch, a finer woven band at a wrist, a better knife handle, a patched sleeve beside an unpatched one. A low-status worker's hands look rougher in this angle, the knuckles cracked, nails dark from firework and ash. The flame does not explain inequality. It simply reveals who has better cloth close to the skin and who has been cleaning what others step around. A second lamp would be useful. Nobody brings one. That tells you enough. Light is being spent carefully. In a wealthier hall, more lamps or candles might widen the circle, and beeswax candles, especially connected with Christian worship and elite display, could burn with a cleaner dignity. Here, one lamp and the banked hearth must carry the evening. The room accepts partial sight as a normal condition. The story reaches a turn involving a lost sheep, a bad crossing, and a man who thought he knew the snow better than the snow knew itself. Someone snorts. Someone else moves a game piece too quickly and is made to take the hand back. The child finally speaks, pointing out the nicked counter. The accused adult denies knowledge with poor acting. Even the old person near the wall opens one eye. The wick sinks a little, the flame shortens. A hand reaches in with the pin and lifts it back toward the oil. For one breath, the flame flares and shows the whole nearby bench, the needle in cloth, the knife against wood, the game board, the comb, the child's intent face, the old person's half smile, the damp hem still drying, the dark roof above receiving smoke. Then the light shrinks again to its circle. Outside, winter has taken the paths, fields, fences and shore. Inside, the household spends the evening in measured brightness. One stitch, one shaving, one move, one sentence, one corrected wick. Darkness waits at the edges, but it does not hurry. The lamp still has a little fuel, the story has not quite ended, and the bone pieces remain on the board with one disputed move lying between them like a tiny, bloodless feud. The disputed move stays on the board, but the room's attention shifts when someone sets down a tool with more weight than a game piece deserves. Wood touches packed earth beside the hearth. Not dropped, placed. The sound is practical enough to pull eyes from the little battlefield. The broken sledge runner lies where it was left earlier, pale against the darker floor, with its damaged edge turned upward. By lamplight it looked like a problem for morning. Now it looks like a problem that has begun clearing its throat. The weather outside may change before dawn. A good snow crust can hold a load one day and fail the next. If fodder must move, or wood, or a person too weak to walk, the runner cannot remain a thought. Winter turns farm work inward. The fields are hidden under snow, but the farm does not sleep. It waits in tools. It waits in buckets, harness, handles, feed racks, doors, hinges, ropes, knives, sledges, baskets, and the stubborn little failures that grow larger when ignored. Most people in Viking-Age Scandinavia and Norse settlements live by farming, herding, fishing, craft, and household labour far more than by raiding. That is the plain historical fact underneath the famous ships. A longship can bring silver. A haystack keeps the cow alive. The sledge runner is tested again. A thumb follows the split. The wood has opened along the grain, which is both helpful and irritating. Helpful because the brake can be read. Irritating because the brake has opinions. A repair must keep the runner smooth enough to slide and strong enough to carry weight. A bad patch catches in snow. A rough peg drags. A weak lashing fails at the farthest point from warmth because broken things enjoy choosing scenery. A length of cord is drawn from a knot of stored odds. It has already been something else. Perhaps a tie for a bundle. Perhaps part of a harness. Perhaps the saved end of a rope too short to impress anyone but too good to burn. The cord is rubbed between fingers, checked for rot, stiffness, and places where fibres have thinned. No one trusts a cord because it looks willing. It must be asked by touch. The written sources leave room for disagreement about how far winter transport on sledges shaped daily farm logistics across different Norse regions, because landscape changes everything. In deep snow and frozen ground, sledges make heavy movement easier. In wet coastal thaw, broken crust, steep slopes, or bare wind-scoured patches, they become less obedient. The tool is simple, the conditions are not. A farm's winter work depends on knowing which surface lies beyond the door tonight, not on admiring sledges in general. Near the hearth, a bucket stands upside down. It is there for a reason. Wooden vessels dislike neglect. If left full, they can freeze. If dried too hard beside heat, staves may shrink and leak. If set carelessly outside, they become part of the ice until someone with an axe and poor temper arrives. A bucket is a small argument between water and wood. The household keeps it close enough to be usable, far enough from heat to avoid cracking, and visible enough that nobody mistakes it for a stool in the dark. Water work waits before dawn. Animals must drink. People must drink. Bowls must be cleaned. Porridge or broth may need water. Snow can be melted, but melting snow takes fuel and produces less water than hope suggests. Ice can be broken from a trough, stream or pond, but then it must be carried back before fingers lose interest in being fingers. A farm in winter is full of heavy things moving short distances again and again. A young worker reaches for the axe. Not the fine weapon of display, not a saga object, just the household axe with a handle worn where hands have learned it. The edge has a nick. It will do. Tools like axes, adzes, knives, awls and augers belong to the daily maintenance of wooden buildings, sledges, carts, vessels and fittings. Iron is valuable. A damaged edge is not thrown aside. It is sharpened, used for rougher work, or complained about while continuing to serve. The whetstone comes out next, a small worn piece that fits the hand. It has its own thin sound when drawn along metal, not loud, enough to sharpen the room. The motion is careful because lamplight lies about edges. One pass, turn, another pass. The person holding the axe checks the bite against a scrap, not against a thumb, because tonight does not need extra problems. One odd household object rests near the tool cluster. A little leather guard for an edge, stiffened and smoke dark, made from some older scrap. It slips over a blade when not in use, protecting both the metal and anyone reaching into a chest without looking. It is easy to forget such objects, because they are made to prevent events. A blade guard's great achievement is nothing happening. History rarely applauds that, but hands appreciate it. The runner is propped on two low supports. A peg from earlier is fitted into place, then pulled out again because the angle is wrong. Nobody sighs dramatically. A wrong peg at the hearth is better than a failed peg on the track. A thinner wedge is shaved. A lashing is tested around the break. The cord tightens. The wood complains softly. The repair begins to look less like a wish and more like a temporary arrangement, which is often what survival requires. Meanwhile, hay remains a pressure in the dark. The buyer animals have eaten their night portion, but morning will ask again. Summer haymaking decides winter choices. Cut grass must dry, be turned, gathered, stacked, protected from rain, and hauled before snow. In short growing seasons, a poor hay crop can force slaughter or hunger for livestock. Every mouth in the byre is attached to a summer field now invisible beneath snow. A fork or wooden rake leans near the animal end, its tines uneven. It may be used for fodder, bedding, or moving messy things that no one wants on hands. If a tine breaks, it can be shaved shorter or replaced if the tool allows. If the handle splits, a binding may hold it. Tools are repaired past beauty. A winter farm has no room for elegant retirement. Manure waits too. It is easy to make jokes about it, until you must move it in dim light. Bedding under animals becomes heavy. Floors need scraping. Waste becomes fertilizer later, and in some places dried dung can serve as fuel. But inside the byre, it is simply work with a smell. The scraper used earlier stands against the partition. Its edge is crusted. Someone will take it up before breakfast. You can tell because nobody has put it away. The repair near the hearth tightens. The cord bites into the wood. A wedge is tapped with the back of a knife, then with a mallet when the knife is judged too precious for that indignity. The mallet has a dented head and a handle polished by many small punishments. Tap, pause, press. The runner is turned, set down, lifted, turned again. The whole process is slow because cold work done badly creates colder work later. The lamp lowers while the room's tasks spread out in silence. A bucket protected from freezing, a blade sharpened, a runner splinted, cord saved from a tangle, hay counted in the mind, manure waiting for hands. These are not separate chores. They are one winter body, with the house as its ribs and the hearth as its tired pulse. At last the runner is laid aside, not finished for travel, but sound enough to face morning judgment. A strip of cord remains loose, left deliberately long so it can be tightened outside when the wood meets cold air. The axe is set near the door, not too near the wet patch. The bucket is shifted with a foot. The whetstone returns to a pouch. The game board still waits behind you with its disputed move unresolved, but no one reaches for it yet. The farm has interrupted the game, as farms do, and the night now carries the smell of sharpened iron, shaved wood, damp fodder, and work waiting just beyond sleep. The smell of sharpened iron stays in the room after the whetstone is put away, but the woman with the keys notices the loose cord first. It lies too close to the walkway, exactly where a sleepy foot will find it and turn one small repair into three larger ones. She bends without comment, lifts the cord, coils it twice, and sets it beside the runner. The keys at her belt answer with a low metal knock. That sound is not loud, yet it travels. A keyring is a small thing, until food, cloth, tools, and dairy stores depend on it. In many Norse households, especially those with property worth guarding, keys are strongly associated with women's domestic authority in both archaeology and later saga literature. They may open chests, storage rooms, bins, or boxes. They also make visible who is trusted to decide when something remains closed. She moves through the house as if the dark has edges only she can read. A bowl near the hearth is lifted and stacked with another. A damp cloth is moved away from a place where sparks might wake badly. The bucket is turned another handspan from the heat. The repaired runner is checked without touching the repair itself. Each action is small, and each prevents a future complaint. good household command often looks like nothing becoming worse. The loom waits along the wall, mostly shadow now, but its weights still show at the bottom like blunt little stones of patience. A warp-weighted loom is one of the great engines of cloth in Viking-Age Scandinavia. Vertical threads hang from a beam, held taut by loom weights made of stone or clay, while the weaver works across them. This is not delicate leisure, it is architecture made of thread. A household without cloth is a household with more cold, fewer sacks, fewer coverings, fewer garments, fewer repairs, and much less dignity. A young woman touches one of the loom weights with her foot as she passes, stopping it from swinging. Even at rest, the loom has rules. Do not tangle the warp. Do not let children play in the hanging threads. Do not set a greasy bowl where wool will find it. The loom is not furniture. It is unfinished weather protection. Near it lies a weaving sword, a flat wooden or bone tool used to beat threads into place. It looks faintly martial, which is pleasing in a house where the real battle tonight is against loose weave, damp wool, and human carelessness. One of the odd pleasures of domestic history is finding a sword that exists to make cloth behave. It harms no one unless left on the floor in the dark, at which point it becomes a weapon against toes. The key-bearing woman lifts a spindle from the bench and gives it back to the younger worker, who has let it roll toward a crack. The spindle whirl is plain, perhaps stone or clay, heavy enough to keep the twist steady. Spinning turns prepared wool into thread, and thread is one of the quiet foundations under almost everything here. Scholars continue to disagree about the exact balance of women's textile labour, enslaved labour, household production, and specialist craft in every Norse community, because tools survive more readily than the hours of the hands that used them. But the weight of the work is not in doubt. Cloth takes time with teeth. Her belt carries more than keys, a small knife, perhaps a needle case, perhaps a pouch with thread, a tally, or a folded scrap nobody else is allowed to lose. The objects hang where the hand can reach them. They also announce responsibility. A person with keys cannot easily pretend not to know what is running low. Authority is not only the right to open a chest, it is the burden of remembering what is inside after everyone else has eaten. She kneels by a wooden tub and presses its lid. The smell of sour dairy seeps at the rim, controlled and sharp. Milk, when available, must be turned quickly into longer-lived food. Butter, cheese, curds, skyr, whey. Dairy vessels need cleaning, watching, and placement away from heat and frost. A tub left wrong can spoil a week's worth of careful work. The cow provides the milk, but the household manager gives it a future. A child watches her hands. The child is not allowed near the chest she opens next. The lid rises just enough to show folded cloth inside, one better piece, two rougher pieces, a band with a torn end, a packet wrapped against damp. The smell is closed wool and old wood, drier than the room around it. She considers the better cloth first, then leaves it where it is. Her fingers choose the older piece with a patch at the corner. That choice says more than a speech. The better cloth waits for a guest, a ceremony, a trade, a wound to reputation, or someday when looking proper matters more than keeping the best thing untouched. The older cloth can wrap the repaired runner, pad a load, cover a draft, or serve someone working outside. Winter asks the same question again and again. What can be spent now, and what must be saved even if saving it is annoying? The sagas often remember forceful women, women who guard honour, manage farms, provoke revenge, arrange marriages, or speak with a sharpness that survives the page. Real life is less tidy than literature, but the pattern of female household management is historically serious. Women could own property in some circumstances, manage farms, control domestic production, and hold authority within the household. Yet this power is uneven. A free farmer's wife with keys does not live the same life as a poor dependent, servant, or enslaved woman sleeping nearer the work she must rise to do. That harder fact sits close to the hearth. Viking society included enslaved people, often referred to in Old Norse contexts as thralls. They could be captured, traded, born into unfreedom, or absorbed into households where their labour supported the warmth and food of others. In this room, one person may decide how much cloth leaves the chest, while another may wake before dawn to scrape the bare floor. The roof covers both. It does not make their choices equal. The keyring turns in her hand. Metal rubs against metal with a tired click. She closes the chest and tests the latch. Not because anyone here is obviously stealing, because winter makes temptation practical. A hungry child, a careless guest, a worker taking too much wool for a patch, a relative who thinks a little butter will not be missed. All of them can change the count. Locked storage is not distrust alone. It is memory made physical. A tally stick lies beside the chest, marked with small cuts. It may record portions, work, debt, or some household count now private to the person who keeps it. Wooden tallies and notched sticks are humble things, easily burned, lost, or misunderstood later. But a notch can hold an agreement better than a tired mind. In a room full of smoke, children, animals, and unfinished repairs, memory benefits from wood. She takes the older cloth and folds it over her arm. The patched corner faces inward, not hidden from shame, just protected from catching. Then she pauses by the loom and pinches a thread between finger and thumb. Too loose. She twists it slightly, sets it back, and moves on. Even at night the loom receives a correction. Work does not end, it is merely kept from fraying while people sleep. The lamp drops lower and her shadow crosses the wall. For a moment the keys, loom weights, dairy tub, chest, runner, bowls, and sleeping bodies all fall into one line of sight. This is the household as she reads it. Food to guard, cloth to finish, tools to place, animals to feed, people to keep from wasting what they do not have to count. No single action is grand. Together they are the difference between a house that merely stands and a house that lasts. She sets the cloth beside the runner for morning, then reaches for the unwashed bowl after all. Authority has not saved her from dishes. It rarely does. The bowl scrapes softly against another, and the keys at her belt give one final knock as she turns from the chest toward the dim hearth, leaving every closed thing closed and every necessary thing just near enough for dawn. The keys give their final knock, and the sound fades into the dimness near the threshold. That is where the room's attention has been returning all night without quite admitting it. Door, latch, draught, wet patch, brush of birch twigs, snow outside, footsteps that may or may not come. The threshold is not only a wooden edge, it is the house's narrow argument with everything beyond the wall. Near that edge, someone has hung a small object from a cord. In the low light it might be a cross, or Thor's hammer, or a bit of bone shaped more by handling than by art. It knocks once against the doorpost when the wind pushes. Nobody reaches for it. Nobody explains it. The object remains where it has been placed, doing whatever work people believe such things can do when night is long and the roof is heavy. The Viking-Age is a period of religious change, not a neat room divided into old belief on one side and Christianity on the other. Across Scandinavia and the Norse settlements, older Norse traditions meet Christian practice through trade, travel, mission, politics, marriage, law, and ordinary contact. In Iceland, Christianity is formally adopted around the year 1000, according to medieval sources, but household habits do not turn like a key in a lock. A prayer may enter a room before an old charm has left it. A person lying near the bench touches a pendant at the throat. The thumb moves once, perhaps from habit, perhaps from worry, perhaps because fingers need something to do before sleep. Pendants shaped like Thor's hammers are well known from the Viking Age, and crosses also appear as Christianity spreads. Sometimes the material record gives both kinds of objects in the same broad cultural landscape. That does not let you read every heart clearly. It only tells you that identity, protection, fashion, memory, and belief could hang very close to the skin. The scholarly debate still circles around what some of these objects meant in daily use, because a hammer pendant may signal devotion, protection, family tradition, resistance to Christian symbols, local style, or simply a thing a person liked and trusted. A cross may mark faith, alliance, status, trade contact, baptism, or hope. Researchers are still split on the question of how quickly outward symbols matched inward belief. A pendant can speak loudly in the ground and still keep its owner's reasons private. The threshold gathers uncertainty because thresholds always do. It is where strangers stand before they become guests. It is where cold enters before it becomes damp. It is where news arrives before it becomes trouble. In many cultures, doorways attract protective acts. Marks, charms, offerings, words, gestures, little placements meant to keep harm out or luck in. For Norse houses, evidence for domestic ritual comes in uneven pieces. Unusual deposits, amulets, later texts, place names, burials, and the difficult reading of objects found where they were not expected. A small bone near a doorway may be a protective deposit, or it may be rubbish caught in a building layer, or it may have fallen from a child's hand, an acquired mystery by waiting underground for modern people with notebooks. Archaeologists have to live with that irritation. The past rarely labels an object charm or lost snack. The house tonight does not care about the category. It only knows that people place things where worry gathers. A low murmur comes from the bench. It could be a Christian prayer. It could be a line remembered from an older charm. It could be a complaint about a knee. Winter blurs such things. A body is cold, a child coughs, an animal shifts, the roof creaks, and the mouth reaches for words that have been used before in trouble. No one in the room turns to inspect the theology. Close quarters sometimes protect privacy by pretending not to hear. Midwinter carries stronger customs than an ordinary night. The Old Norse Yule belongs to the winter season and later becomes bound into Christian Yule and Christmas traditions in the north. The older pre-Christian Yule is not fully recoverable in every detail, but feasting, drinking, sacrifice in some contexts, communal gathering, and the marking of seasonal time clearly matter in Norse society. In winter, a feast is not simply pleasure, it is timing made visible. Stored food is opened on purpose. Drink is shared, rank is shown. Kin are measured by how they sit, speak, give, and receive. A drinking horn hangs in memory near such gatherings, though tonight the room holds only a simpler cup. A horn is awkward because it cannot easily be set down unless it has a stand or fitting. That awkwardness makes it social. You receive it, drink, pass it, and keep the chain of obligation moving. A cup with a flat bottom permits escape. A horn insists on participation. It is a vessel with social pressure built into its shape, which is either brilliant design or mild bullying. Feasting also carries risk of words. Oaths, boasts, insults, promises and jokes sharpened too far can outlive the fire that heard them. Later saga literature loves these moments, where speech becomes a trap and everyone remembers exactly who said what after the ale had made confidence cheaper. In a farmhouse the scale is smaller, but not the danger. A foolish promise made in winter may still be waiting in spring. Near the door, the hanging object taps again. The wind has found a new angle. Someone reaches over and presses a bit of wool deeper into a draught gap, and the charm, cross, hammer, bone, or whatever it is stops moving. Protection can be spiritual. It can also be wool stuffed properly into a crack. The two do not compete as much as modern categories might like. A household uses every defence it understands. A woman by the chest marks herself quickly, perhaps with the sign of the cross, perhaps only smoothing her tunic. The movement is too small to be certain. That is honest. Conversion in the north is not just a royal decree or a dramatic baptism scene. It is also tiny household gestures, new burial customs, church attendance, feast days, food rules, names, marriages, and the slow adjustment of what people say over children, animals, doors, and the dead. Older beliefs remain in story. Thor, Odin, Freya, the Norns, land spirits, elves, and ancestors may live in memory, poetry, warning, and habit, though the surviving sources come through complex channels, often written down by Christians after the Viking-Age. People in this room do not experience belief as a clean museum display. They inherit names, fears, jokes, obligations and fragments. A grandmother's warning may carry more force than a formal doctrine when the roof groans. One peculiar object sometimes linked to this crossing of worlds is the hammer pendant that resembles the shape of a cross enough to answer it. Some examples seem almost to speak in both directions at once. The famous Kubelev pendant from Denmark even carries a runic inscription, identifying it as a hammer, rare helpfulness from an object usually content to be ambiguous. Most pendants refuse such clarity. They sit against wool and let people argue later. The house itself feels like a ritual object, though no one here would need that phrasing. Fire in the centre, door guarded, stores closed, animals sheltered, tools laid for mourning, bodies placed by warmth and rank. A house makes order every night from things that would otherwise scatter: heat, food, fear, labour, obligation, memory. Religion does not float above that. It settles into bowls, thresholds, pendants, feast cups, spoken names, and the decision to touch wood before speaking too confidently about tomorrow's weather. The old person near the wall shifts and mutters a name. It may be a person's name. It may be a saint. It may be one of the old powers. It may be the name of someone long dead whose habits still govern where a spoon is kept. Nobody asks. The room has enough certainty. The roof is heavy, the stores are counted, the ember is hidden, the animals are breathing, and the door must hold until morning. The threshold darkens where meltwater has spread into the dirt. The little object on the cord hangs still now. Outside, snow covers the path so completely that no human mark remains visible from inside. Inside, belief stays practical, mixed, cautious, and close to the hand. A thumb rests on a pendant. A scrap of wool blocks a gap. A whispered word disappears under the roof smoke. The house keeps both charm and repair near the door, because winter does not ask which kind of protection you meant. The whispered word disappears under the roof smoke, and the house does not answer. It only continues. That is enough. The door holds its bar. The wool plug stays in the gap. The pendant near the threshold hangs still. Beyond the wall, winter keeps pressing with the calm patience of something that does not need to hurry. Inside, the room is narrowed to what remains awake, a red seam under the ash, a cow shifting once in the byre, a sleeper's blocked nose, the faint tick of water into the broken bowl under the roof drip, the tools set near the repaired runner, the smell of lamp oil fading now that the flame is gone. The house is not silent, but its sounds have become smaller, spaced farther apart, as if each one must cross a deeper dark before reaching you. The hearth is the last visible centre. Not flame now, ember. The ash has been drawn over it carefully, leaving heat hidden rather than spent. In households built around open hearths, keeping embers alive overnight saves the labour of starting fire from nothing in the morning, especially when tinder is damp or fuel is scarce. That practical fact lies under the grey ash like a sleeping animal. Dawn will need it. Cold hands will need it. The pot, the lamp, the water. The first human voice will all come easier if that red heart remains. A person leans close without stirring too much ash. The check is brief. A faint glow answers where the cover is thinnest. Good. The ash is eased back, not too much. The coal must breathe, but not wake fully. Firekeeping at this hour is not drama. It is restraint. The temptation is brightness. The skill is leaving darkness useful. Specialists still hesitate over whether hearths in every Norse house should be understood only as practical features or also as social and symbolic centres, because the same patch of fire can cook stew, warm hands, seat guests, anchor stories, mark rank, dry clothing, and gather ritual attention without separating those meanings cleanly. The people around you do not divide the hearth into categories. They lie down facing the thing that makes morning possible. Near the fire, the unfinished work waits in its proper disorder. The sledge runner has its temporary repair. The cord is left long for tightening in daylight. The axe rests near the door, but not where a sleepy person will find it with a bare foot. The whetstone is back in its pouch. The older cloth chosen from the chest lies folded beside the runner, ready to wrap, pad, or protect. Nothing has been fully completed. Everything has been brought close enough to continue. That is how the house survives winter, by refusing to let every problem become urgent at once. Some matters are handled now. Some are placed for morning. Some are sealed in a chest. Some are tied with cord. Some are covered with ash. Some are ignored because no hand can fix them before sleep, and tired people who do not sleep break more things than they repair. The benches take the household's weight. Wool blankets rise and fall over shoulders. A child has stolen more space than size permits. An elder's feet rest near the cloth-wrapped stone, now mostly cooled but still remembered by the body. The visitor from the snow has tucked his damp cloak edge away from other bedding. Someone's hand remains on a pouch under the bench, not gripping it, only resting there because habit keeps property close. One quirky object near your knee catches the faint ember glow. A little carved gaming piece left beside the board, forgotten after the farm work interrupted play. It stands alone, separated from its companions, the tiny king of nothing at all. In the morning, someone will accuse someone else of moving it. The accusation may be false. It may also be entirely correct. Even in a house fighting winter, justice over a board game cannot be assumed. The animals settle deeper. A cow exhales through her nose, slow and damp. Sheep shift against one another. The buyer smell is no longer an arrival. It has become part of the room's fabric. Animal warmth joins human warmth, hearth warmth, turf-held warmth, stored food, folded wool, and the last heat caught in stones near the ash. None of it is clean. All of it counts. The walls hold their slow memory of the day's fire. Turf does not give heat quickly, and it does not lose it quickly either. Root-bound earth, stone base, moss plugs, patched cracks and inner facing keep the cold from rushing in. The wall is not a heroic barrier, it is a delay. In winter, delay is precious. If cold takes longer to reach you, sleep has time to arrive first. The roof waits above, heavy with sod and snow. The drip into the broken bowl has slowed. Perhaps the leak has frozen again. Perhaps the melt has passed. Perhaps morning will reveal a darker stain and another task. For now the rafters hold. Smoke-black timber, sod, bark where used, and the packed weight of the roof keep the night above the room rather than inside it. A roof's success is rarely exciting. It is the absence of a crash, the dryness of a blanket, the fact that no one looks up. A final hand checks the door bar. It does not lift. Good. The threshold remains dark with meltwater and dirt, but the scrap of wood still covers the worst patch. The birch twig brush leans ready for morning snow. The little hanging object near the post stays still. Charm, cross, hammer, bone, memory or habit, it has no need to explain itself now. It hangs where worry gathers and lets the wool plug do the immediate work. Outside there is the field, though you cannot see it. Fence lines buried, tracks softened, skis hardening beside the door, a route waiting to be tested, a broken runner waiting to become trusted or condemned. Water under ice, fodder under cover. The world is not gone in darkness, it is only hidden behind tasks. Inside, the Longhouse becomes less like a room and more like an arrangement of held things, held heat, held breath, held food, held animals, held tools, held rank, held patience. The famous violence of winter remains outside because many ordinary decisions have stood in its way. A threshold stepped over carefully, a wall patched with moss, a beam saved from burning, a roof watched for leaks, a smoke vent adjusted, an ember covered, a bench shared, a cow fed, a seam mended, a sack tied, a lamp trimmed, a runner repaired, a chest locked, a word whispered near the door. None of these decisions is large enough for a song by itself. Together, they make the night survivable. The ember under ash dims until it is almost invisible. Your eyes stop searching for it. The house can keep that watch now. Your cloak lies close at the neck. The bench presses against your hip. The smell of smoke is in your sleeve, your hair, the blanket, the roof, the old wood, the bowls, the drying cloth, the hanging fish, and the sleep of everyone near you. The fire has no more to show. The wall has no more to prove. The roof has not failed. The animals breathe. The door stays closed. And now the house asks less of you. You do not need to count the stores, or tighten the cord, or judge the snow road, or listen for every small drip in the roof. Those things can remain where tired hands have placed them. Morning will find them. Morning is good at finding unfinished work. For now, the room grows simpler. There is wool against your shoulder. There is wood beneath you. There is turf beyond the wood, snow beyond the turf, and a darkness outside that cannot quite reach the skin. The old ember keeps its red patience under ash. It does not blaze. It does not need praise. It only remains, and remaining is enough. Breath slows along the benches. A child turns once and settles. The elder's hand loosens. The visitor sleeps with the weather still drying from his cloak. In the byre, one animal shifts, then grows still again. The roof drip has stopped, or become too soft to matter. The Longhouse holds its warmth unevenly, imperfectly, honestly. A little near the hearth, less near the door. More between bodies, some stored in earth, some trapped in wool, some waiting inside the ash for dawn. Let the night be small now. Let the tools rest where they are. Let the tide sack stay closed. Let the pendant hang by the threshold without needing a name. Let the snow keep its distance. The old house remains around you, made of hillside, timber, smoke, labour, animals, cloth, food, and care. It is not comfortable in the way modern comfort speaks. It is something older and plainer. A place where many hands have slowed the cold long enough for sleep to come. The ember waits. The walls hold. The roof bears the snow. And outside, winter stands at the door, patient as ever, but not invited in tonight. Sweet dreams.